awful lot going on in the show, and I'm delighted to say, joining me for the entire show, for the first time in this role, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, Conservative Home was basically the website representing the grassroots Tory members, and you guys had a pretty rough time of it over the last few years. I think a lot of time actually trying to give, should we say, wise advice to those at the top of the Tory Party as they just swap their leaders every few minutes and absolute chaos and incompetence. I don't think it was a surprise to you or any of your website, readers and subscribers that that the Tories were ousted in July 24.
No.
Has it been a surprise to you just how bad Labour have been, given they promised change, but it seems to make it even worse than before?
Yeah, I suppose yes is the answer. I gave Labour personally a very, very straight bat ahead of the general election. There were signs that things would probably end up going wrong eventually.
Those signs being?
Those signs being
Keir Starmer was involved?
the failure to make any big controversial commitment during the general election. My sort of personal theory is that basically all of this is karma for 2017. Because in 2017, Theresa May called that general election, had a 25-point lead in the polls, and being Theresa May, she sort of very dutifully went, well, I will do the responsible thing and I am going to try and get a mandate for social care. Labour branded that the dementia tax and she almost lost that election. Yeah. And that meant that you had 2 years in which Labour was obviously going to win the next election. The condition of the public finances was obvious, but Starmer not only refused to make any controversial decisions, but he and Rachel Reeves allowed themselves to be bounced by Jeremy Hunt, who was then Chancellor, into ruling out all of the tax rises that
all
they
of the
were...
major, widespread ones.
Basically the big revenue taxes, VAT, income tax, national insurance, the ones that lots of people pay. And so that was going to go wrong eventually. But the fact that it's gone wrong so quickly... I mean, the weird thing is, when Labour first came in, I'm like, oh, goodness, how am I going to cover this? I've been covering the Conservatives forever. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's government in chaos. Is this mayor the answer? And you're like, oh, OK, actually, I know this one.
Yeah, I've just been here before. Yeah. And I mean, Andy Burnham was supposed to be plotting, head of the Labour Party conference. Now it's Wes Streeting. Again, we were discussing on the show yesterday, the Health Secretary, it's a fantastic media performer, batted it out of the park effortlessly, looking very leadershipy, you could argue, is that a word? On the airwaves yesterday. And then we had Keir Starmer. I mean, 3 of Kemi Badenoch's 6 questions yesterday were about this plotting. Now in danger, well, either you knew that your Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, was putting out these senior sources briefings to numerous media organisations about plotting by Wes Streeting, Shabana Mahmood and Ed Miliband, or you didn't know, well, on either ground, Morgan McSweeney has to go, does he not? But he's seen as some sort of brilliant, Mandelsonian figure, isn't he, in the Labour Party? He won us the election. No, I'll tell you who won the election. The Tory Party won you the election. That's the reality. Because we've seen once they're actually in charge, he's now Chief of Staff, they are apparently utterly incompetent to turn things around. They think that the solution to low growth is even lower growth. The solution to wildly, overdone spending is to spend more. The solution to vastly higher taxes than we've ever seen before is to put them up even more. And the solution to huge borrowing costs is to borrow more. That's not where the British public is.
No, I think to an extent what's happened is they've essentially just overestimated the extent to which what happened over the last few years was the result of their personal genius, right? Because you can see Starmer takes over by running from the left, then he boxes the left out as he moves the Labour Party to the centre,
what genius!
And then he wins this historic majority, right? It's just Blair all over again. But of course, the difference between now and 1997 is that Blair inherited a strongly growing economy with very low taxes, and so could spend 10 years hosing money at the public, which it turns out voters like, and also.
But without them feeling the pain.
Well, indeed.
There were still oil revenues and city revenues.
But also taxes had historically been very low under the Conservatives. And so nowadays you're introducing tax rises on people in the depths of a cost of living crisis when taxes are already high. That's a big difference. But also, this majority is big in Parliament, but it's the most marginal majority Parliament in terms of seat majorities since 1945. Now, I don't think that delegitimises the government. I think there was a bit of cope from some of the Tories about the loveless landslide. But it is nonetheless a fact.
Under our system, they have every right to be ruling.
But it is nonetheless a fact that you have hundreds of Labour MPs with very, very slender majorities, and therefore...
Including Wes Streeting. I mean, one of the key things, actually, if you want to be the leader of any political party, is you've got to have a safe seat, so you don't have to spend your entire time trying to shore up your safe seat. And he's got, majority of 500 odd, and he's facing challenges from, all sides, including from, the Gaza MP candidate, on the left. And that's the issue, isn't it? The reality is anyone who would take over from Keir Starmer going to be more competent or saner? because the reality is, Angela Rayner still plotting, as the ousted Deputy Prime Minister. I'm sure David Lammy's humorous. I mean, he definitely thinks he's a player. David, sweetheart, no. Even if your own parents won't tell you, trust me, it's never going to happen. But I mean, Shabana Mahmood talks the talk, quite impressive. But she, you've got to actually deliver on something. She's not delivered, not done anything. Wes Streeting absolutely appears to be the grown-up in the room, but at the end of the day, again, he's been, absolutely pandering to the pro-Palestinians lot. That, I'm sorry, that's a deal breaker for me, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know whether he'd win back votes. I mean, is there any? I mean, Ed Miliband. At the end of the day, this is a party. The party membership voted for Jeremy Corbyn for a few short years ago. Those people have not all left. There is every chance they would vote for the left-wing candidate, and that would be Ed Miliband. I mean, it would be hilariously fun as a journalist. As a British citizen and a taxpayer, it would be a disaster.
I mean, I agree. I managed to get odds of 40-1 on Ed Miliband being our next Prime Minister.
What did you put down?
The other week, I put down 100 quid.
And what? Wow!
Essentially, because I think it's actually.
You're the only person who's going to be better off if Ed Miliband becomes Prime Minister.
Well, I think it's called emotional hedging. But essentially, if you look at it, two-stage process. Do you think Starmer can go before the next election? Obviously, but then it was ironically Miliband who abolished the internal college Labour used to have. It's now a straight members vote. If you look at the
after candidates are selected by the MPs.
Indeed. So in the final round, and then if you look at the Labour list have a version of the Conservative Home Cabinet League table that we've been running for years. Ed Miliband is consistently 20-30 points clear of everyone else in it. So I think it's actually really plausible. But of course, he's not going to fix it.
Sorry, everybody.
I know.
Ruining your Thursday morning.
I should have maybe given a content warning before I flashed that information up for people. But the big problem.
We'd like to apologise for the gore on air.
But even if you put in Shabana Mahmood or Wes Streeting, the fact is that Labour MPs have shown that they are not prepared to do even the smallest amount of spending cuts.
5 billion welfare cuts was, drop in the ocean.
Trivial. And they can't even do that. The tax rises that Rachel Reeves are going to do isn't going to fix anything either. Basically, British public spending is on a completely unsustainable trajectory. And part of the problem is Starmer didn't reconcile any of his MPs to this before the general election by telling them it was going to happen.
And he promised the voters the world.
Exactly. So if someone else came in, the MPs would be exactly the same. They'd say, we didn't vote, we didn't come in.
The in-tray is exactly the same.
The in-tray is exactly the same. The willingness of Labour backbenchers to cut spending is also unchanged, which means at best you end up with someone like Streeting having to have a general election on a mandate of spending cuts.
Good luck with that.
Exactly. So no, I actually don't think in the short term, obviously having someone who's better at the media day to day is going to palliate the problem. But no, the problems with this government are structural and they're not going to be changed by a change of personnel.
Very interesting. And also we've got the economic growth figures. Remember, steely focus on growth, 0.1%. Well, I love it. It's even lower than they were predicting, which was 0.2%. Let's go party in the street if it was 0.2%. That's okay. On a mathematical technicality, that is growth. That's not growth. That's flatlining.
It is. One, that the British economy basically varies around zero, and so politicians just get very excited. But also, this is the non-per capita figure. And people get very bored when I talk about this, but it is important because you have overall GDP, and then you have GDP divided by the number of people in the country.
And we've had, an extra, how many people? We got extra 2 or 3 million in the last couple of years.
Right, exactly. I think in 1 year it was something like a net 700, 800,000, right? And so if you're managing 0.1% growth, while you're bringing 800,000 people into the country, you're actually getting poorer.
Again, I've always liked to make this point on the show, as all those people who are coming to this country, both legally and illegally, are all highly paid engineers and doctors. I'm sure they're making a net contribution, Henry, and I will not have anyone say anything different.
Sorry.
Because we don't like facts anymore. It's absolutely fascinating. Look, number 10 is in a lot of trouble. BBC in a lot of trouble. By all accounts, they are ready to issue that apology to Donald Trump. I don't know why it's taken them so long. They have already said sorry. 2 people have lost their jobs. Well, they're still there defending everything at the BBC, in Tim Davie and Deborah Turness. Talking on the show yesterday, Donald Trump did an interview on American TV, basically saying, look, I feel an obligation to sue. There's no doubt there's going to be a payout of some sort. Okay, it's not going to be $1 billion, but it could well be in the tens of millions or low millions. That's our money. Should the BBC pay a single penny?
I mean, the way that defamation law works is that they would probably have to. I don't think that we can simply... I don't know if there's a rule that means that we can simply say that they can't. If he takes them to court and they're found to have defamed him, which I think...
It's under Florida law.
Because you can...
There are some difficulties, because actually there are lots of court cases in America and there are lots of stuff going on in the Senate,
but you can
which actually suggests that this programme wasn't shown in America by all accounts, and it didn't actually say anything different to what a lot of other people in America have said.
Can he not sue in the British courts?
No, he's passed the deadline was mid-October or late October.
Because there is a sort of global problem.
Makes you wonder about the timing of that all coming out, I thought.
I mean, it's interesting because there is actually generally a problem with the fact that our courts we're known for libel tourism.
Yep.
Because people will come and sue because our laws are so egregious. If there's a finding in an American court, I actually don't know what the legal basis is for the BBC.
But either way, it'll be our money. That's the thing, it'll be our money.
I suppose they can take it from BBC America.
Exactly. Well, Donald Trump is, of course, I think they're going to end up settling of some sort, aren't they? Donald Trump is also in the news over Epstein and this latest tranche of Epstein files. Now, there's this tit for tat going on between the Democrats and the Republicans, and we saw the White House press secretary really, Catherine Leavitt, really giving it welly yesterday about how, these documents that have been released that basically claimed that Donald Trump had spent hours at the home of Jeffrey Epstein with an unnamed, quote, victim, later named as Virginia Giuffre, pointing out that Virginia Giuffre, now sadly dead, that she had actually issued public statements claiming no wrongdoing by Donald Trump at any time and had been perfectly professional with her at all times. So who knows what? But then overnight, tens and tens of thousands of documents and files released, each of which containing huge numbers of pages overnight. Have we learned anything new? Because there's this claim that this photo of Andrew with Virginia Giuffre is real. Oh, come on, we all thought it was real anyway, even though Prince Andrew denied it. But Prince Andrew having such a strong track record of being proven true in everything he said. But these other claims, I mean, how damaging is it to Trump, and how much does it matter?
I think the fact that the Democrats, one, they did that very selective leak of 3 of the emails first, and that sort of tactic doesn't work if you're going to have to release the rest of the documents eventually. It is also unhelpful for them that Virginia Giuffre, as you say, has been very, very clear that Donald Trump never did anything wrong, which means that if you're like, but Donald Trump spent lots of time with Virginia Giuffre, it's like, well, what, being professional? So I don't know how much damage that will do.
Exactly. She made that statement. She's never retracted that statement.
Exactly. And we know that Virginia Giuffre is not afraid to go after powerful people. No. So I think. But
also we know that there are loads of senior Democrat figures who've had the finger pointed at them.
Well, exactly. I think the issue with stories like this is you mentioned tens of thousands of documents, each of which has dozens or more pages, right? And the newspapers all want to get onto that story, but no one's had time to read all of that stuff.
Well, I assumed when I woke up this morning that I would wake up to amazing headlines of stuff they'd found in this tranche of documents.
And they might come in the next couple of days, but with the best will in the world. If I handed you 23,000 documents and said, you've got 12 hours, Julia, I want you to go and find the needle in this haystack. I couldn't do it. And so I suspect if there is any interesting stuff in here, it may come out over the next couple of days. It's not really surprising it's not in the overnights.
No, absolutely. We shall wait and see anything more comes out. I mean, I assume every journalist in the world is looking at this stuff, and the whole teams of people, researchers at newspapers in America are going through it all and finding something. But again, I think everyone just knows that there were far too many important men who were involved, far too many people who knew, and everyone's pointing the finger. And I mean, again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist ever on anything other than the fact that I don't believe for a nanosecond that Jeffrey Epstein took his own life, because very, very, very powerful billionaires who've got out of everything in the past and have committed horrendous acts and have still managed to live their lifestyle and be hanging out with princes and billionaires and former presidents don't take their own lives because they think they're going to beat the rap. That's the only thing I've ever been a conspiracy theorist on in my life.
I mean, I think that's perfectly plausible if you look at the prison, the fact that all of the security cameras were turned off and everything else. But also, do you remember the Panama Papers from a few years ago? The journalist who dug those up got blown up by a car bomb in Malta, right? It's not common, but these things do happen. And I think sometimes, obviously conspiracy theories can be hugely damaging in news, but I think sometimes there is a tendency to overcorrect a little bit and be like, there is never any conspiracy.
It's nearly always down to incompetence, folks. It really is. So when it comes to our
conspiracy theories are the great optimists.
Yes, exactly. I know. You just don't think they're that bad. It's like the number 10 plot. No, really, they are just that rubbish. They really are. Let's talk about the doctors' strike, because tomorrow, first day of 5-day strikes by the resident doctors, used to be called junior doctors. They have had in total a 29% pay rise, 22% one year, 22.1% and 5% plus another year. They're still claiming that they're, way like fifth poorer than they were in 2008. They particularly choose this one date, which completely skews where they're no worse off than the rest of us are after years of not just austerity, pay freezes and inflation. They really aren't, and they're certainly a lot better off in terms of pay restoration than most public sector workers. Now, I've got skin in the game. I'm a doctor's daughter. I think doctors who've done a hell of a lot of work to get into medical school, a hell of a lot of training to do a really important job, I think they should be paid really well. I don't have any issue with that. I think, given that there's a shortage of them willing to work, I think there's a very strong argument more of them should be paid well. I think more of them should work full-time, because if you're worried about money, maybe work full-time and stop bleating about, I can't pay my mortgage on 3 days a week. No, funny that, most people can't. But Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is the only person in the country shocked that the doctors came back for more after taking the first pay cut rise he gave them. And he's accused the doctors' union, the BMA, of behaving like a cartel. And the evidence is really very clear that they don't have the level of support they've had previously. Do you think doctors may have overplayed their hand?
Well, the problem with that is that they just remain with vast leverage because they have the ability to shut down the NHS. And any government that wants to take on the BMA over this has to account for the fact that ultimately the public will just want the NHS to open again, right? But the BMA are a cartel, right? This country
aren't all unions like that?
Well, private sector unions these days don't tend to be, because they don't have that power. Public sector unions, I suppose
even the teachers have got a whole variety of unions.
Exactly, they have a variety of unions. But in this case, the BMA literally negotiates with the government to restrict the number of training places we have for new doctors, right?
And then complain that we don't have enough doctors.
And that is cartel behaviour, right? And you have the fact that, for example, they're complaining about the lack of training places for resident doctors, but it's not. They can't train in private hospitals in this country. Why don't we simply pass a law that says that a private hospital can take on a junior doctor to do their training placement? There's all of these things where actually, if you come up with practical solutions, they're like, oh no. Actually, we just want the NHS to have infinity money, please.
But also, they constantly say about all these doctors leaving, and they're going to leave the country, and that's why we need to bolster the NHS. You go, well, hold on a minute. They're leaving the country to work in other countries like Canada, like Australia, New Zealand, where they don't have a free at the point of need health service the same way we do. They have a health service which is you actually have to pay, basically like an insurance policy, as most of the Western world does have, and where people get the care they need in a timely fashion. People survive longer with heart disease and cancer and the like than they do, way more than in this country, and the waiting lists are pretty much unheard of. And yes, the poorest people do get the same care because it's covered by the state. And they constantly criticise any move to change the NHS structure, while happily understanding these doctors want to go off and work for more pay, doing a better job in countries that don't have the same structure as us.
I mean, there was that amazing bit of research from America from a sort of pro-NHS think tank a few years ago, which The Guardian wrote up as NHS is the best healthcare system in the Western world, except at keeping people alive.
I quoted that on Question Time and got booed.
It's incredible. They put health outcomes 10th out of 10, but everything else. I think the other thing that I think is shocking about the fact that these people go overseas that we don't really think about enough is, even though they now pay tuition fees, every medical student in this country is subsidised by the taxpayer to the tune of over £200,000, right? And I think the expectation is that investment is paid for by working in the NHS. So currently, you can be subsidised by the taxpayer, 200 and something grand, get your medical degree, take it to Australia and bank all the proceeds privately.
That said, we import a load of foreign doctors, and we those countries, or they pay for their training.
Indeed.
And we get them cheap. What annoys me is how many young people, and I've seen it among my daughter's friends, brilliant young kids who've got straight 9s at GCSE, straight A's in science subjects and maths, and can't get into medical school, and then they and then we're saying we haven't got enough doctors. It's like, this is mad. Our brightest and our best are not able to train, but we'll take someone from India or someone from Nigeria who, frankly, is unlikely to be trained to the same level. That's the reality. There's one final topic I want to get to, which is driving tests. Again, gone through this with the teenager. There are two changes, because we've got a massive backlog in driving tests, particularly, in London and the South East, but other parts of the country. A lot of it started during lockdown. Lots of youngsters couldn't get tests. They're going to change the rules to basically stop bots booking slots and then basically selling them on, but also they're going to bring in the armed forces. They're going to actually get driving examiners from the Defence School of Transport to basically provide tests for civilians. We've got an absurd situation where you have to wait up to 2 months to do a theory test, and you have to do your theory test before you're allowed to apply for your driving test, and wait for a driving test, certainly my daughter's was over 6 months. And then you have to apply for a date, and you just get given a date. Well, it doesn't matter if that date is the same day as one of your A-levels. Tough. So what everyone ends up doing, they sign up to these apps that cost a few quid, and then you basically, if one comes free, if a test date comes free, you can then pay to take that test date. And that's what's happening, because it's an absolute system that doesn't work. The idea that we are making people wait what is effectively, 6, 8, 9 months to be able to get a test to pass their driving skills is madness.
I mean, it is, because... Yeah,
should be something you could book next week.
I mean, it is one of the things that makes me feel like an old man, because it would not even occur to me when I got my driving licence that this is a thing that could become an impossible thing to get. But also, driving instructors are presumably not hugely difficult to train, right? And therefore you'd expect...
With all due respect, yeah.
If there was if there's this massive pent-up demand, what you'd expect to happen is you'd have, like, businesses that provided the tests expanding. But it's not a business.
No, because it's the state.
It's the state.
It's the state, and therefore there's that bottleneck.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think I read in this story that they've hired several hundred new people, but because of people leaving, they've only actually added 40 to the total number of instructors. They're bringing in these defence instructors, which aren't military, they're civil servants from the Ministry of Defence. But again, it's like we desperately raid the Defence Department for every
if
time
in doubt,
there's a
bring
crisis.
them in.
Exactly, right? Sandbags, driving tests.
I just think a country that can't even enable young people. And again, look, I live in London. It's not a big deal to have be able to have a driving licence for where we live. I know lots of people who they live in the middle of nowhere. Their parents have been getting up at 6 a.m. to drive them to college, to school, whatever. They need their kids to be able to be independent.
To get
a job. Lots of people literally can't get work without a driving licence. But most people drive to work, drive back from work. Get to college and things. It is absolutely absurd. It's just another symptom of just totally inadequate, failing system and inability to deal with it. But if in doubt, bring the military in. I'd love to hear your